Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to today's Kyle Seraphin Show. It is Thursday, it's December the 18th. Thanks for being along for this ride. It's going to be an interesting day. This has been a wild week already, and I woke up this morning irritated with people that are making excuses for folks inside the Trump administration that can't get the job done. And I forgot the funniest thing that happened yesterday, which I'm not at liberty to share yet, but let me just say, we had a moment. It's always fun when somebody sets a trap for you and all of their preparations are inadequate because you see the trap coming from a mile away. There's a lot of good movies that are made on this, like the trap is set, but it's sprung by someone else. I do really enjoy that sort of stuff. Woke up to see the producer for the Dan Bongino radio show saying that Bongino will be addressing the Seraphin situation soon, as much as I can tell. I just put up a Christmas card that showed Dan Bongino emptying a chemical toilet into a storm drain. With the famous expression, shitter's full, which is kind of a funny joke. I guess the swamp is full or whatever. And I guess that's insulting to him. So we'll deal with that when it comes. Won't be the first time that somebody is punched down from a very lofty height, whether they be a government official or they've got a much bigger platform to yell on. Knock yourself out. Your record stands on its own. If you're a failure, you're a failure. And that is the entire point of today's program, which is that the Trump administration can make excuses for anything except the actual results that they get. What a disappointment. I listened to the speech last night that Donald Trump gave. I listened to Alex Jones' commentary on it, Steve Bannon commentary on, oh, it's 100% right. They just need to be more hardcore. Nope, it's not 100% correct. What we heard was self-cheerleading and self-congratulatory fluff. And what Americans are experiencing, because I go and I talk to my neighbors, whether it be at the park or whether it be at the gym or whether it be in the grocery store, and people are not doing great. That so-called golden era didn't happen. It didn't happen for you, and it didn't happen for me, and doesn't mean that we're not better off than a Kamala Harris presidency. I think that would have been interesting and disastrous. I think that would have been like white wine day drinking and probably worse than Biden. But that doesn't mean that you didn't overpromise and underdeliver. And claiming victory without actually getting the victory is not the win you think it is. Americans are not going to fall for last century's slop just because you said it and powerful voices that we generally want to agree with came out and announced it. And I'm going to also tell you something about the independent media. And I use the word independent in air quotes. If you guys are watching on Spotify or Rumble or YouTube, you guys can see it. What I'm saying is that the word independent, when in front of media, they are the most dependent people in America. They are dependent on access and audience, and they cling together for messaging and narrative so that they can survive on the little life rafts they've built. Not very many of them have the balls or the audacity or just the courage to step out and say the thing that they independently think without worrying, well, what consequences will there be? Will somebody come after me? Will some Fox News host will Newsmax now ignore me? Last night I got invited on Newsmax, and I've never been on the program with Carl Hibby as far as I know. I don't think I've ever been on his program. But the producer reached out and asked me to be on there. And I said, no, not interested. I don't like the format of television. And maybe you're in the same boat. Maybe that's why you listen to podcasts. Maybe that's why you're listening to me. And if you do, make sure you guys have liked this video. Make sure you've subscribed to our channel, wherever you're listening, Rumble or YouTube or whatever. And if you're not listening on Spotify, you're missing out on the potential of the video, which means you're going to miss out on some funny things today, especially a sign language interpreter at Brown University. So here's the highlights I'm going to hit. Brown University, the House is out of session. We passed a new healthcare bill. God knows why. We're going to talk a little bit about the Trump speech and why I think it's a letdown. We're going to end with what Trump promised in 2016, which I said yesterday. That should be a reset for your brains. If you think that he's doing a fantastic job, I want you to assess him against what he claimed he would do in the first term, since we're now we're coming into the tail end of the second term. And we've got about a year left before Donald Trump is ineffective if they lose the midterms. And I suspect they will, because the people who are in the House suck. The people who are in the Senate are weak, and nobody has the courage to actually do the thing they said they were going to do. So we're going to hear messaging and excuses. Also, of course, Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, accidentally announced yesterday or intentionally got Donald Trump to say that he's going to be going back to his show. So the announcement came out. It's going to be January, and we're going to get the next iteration of the Dan Bongino show probably in February, and he's already making the rounds. The problem is Dan Bongino is the thin-skinned coward. He's been a thin-skinned coward for a long time, and so he's been out there rattling his saber in the media and punching his influence around to media executives and bad-mouthing people that didn't go along with his narrative, and all he did was cheerlead for an agency that he said was irredeemably corrupt and needed to be dismantled, and there should be total personnel warfare, and all he ended up doing was tanking his own credibility with a lot of his former audience. Shame on you. Humility goes a long way. I don't think we're going to see that. Hubris is a fatal flaw for many men, and Dan Bongino's no exception. So, with that in mind, and the country on the line, it always is on the line. Let's be real. At the end of the day, if the United States even ceased to exist as the United States, it would still be whatever state you live in. You'd still live in Tennessee or Illinois, God forbid, or Texas or Washington or Montana, and it would still be okay. You know, your state government would still do the thing that it's supposed to do. The cops would still show up, the fire department. You guys found that out during the government shutdown, which is why I don't mind punching at the federal government, because if it didn't exist, we would deal with probably less slop. Probably less propaganda. It would just be local propaganda. And you might actually be able to drive to the state capitol and go out there and tell them what you think. Here we go with a sponsor read for people who understand that things could be sketchy. And maybe you want to have some preparation. For me, it's a personal insurance policy. We've got a 90-day emergency food kit underneath our stairs for me and my wife. MyPatriotSupply.com/Kyle is a outstanding way to go find a gift. And right now they're doing a buy one, get two free Christmas special. So you guys got to check that out if you haven't done it. Food security is a gift that has both sort of good feelings and also gives you a little sense of safety at this time when it's cool outside all month long. When you guys buy an emergency food kit, you're going to get 2 more food kits free, and you can give them as gifts or you can keep them. I don't really, make a difference on that one. The 4-week emergency food kit is a good way to get yourself started up. It's 30 days worth of food to keep you strong and capable of resisting whatever sort of tyrannical nonsense comes your way. And then, of course, they're going to throw in 2 one-week food kits, absolutely free. And you can give them as gifts for somebody who maybe is into preparedness and already has some ideas, and maybe they want to add something to their truck, or maybe they need a little nudge in that direction. They've never thought about it before, and you can get them started. These days, it just makes sense to have emergency food stored away. Buy one, get 2 free. That's more than normal. You're getting 50% of the kit free. It's also a meaningful gift that means that you care about their survival. So that's not nothing. MyPatriotSupply.com/KYLE. MyPatriotSupply.com/Kyle. This is only a holiday offer right now, so it's going to end at the end of the month. Make sure you guys get this done right now. If you're interested, link in the show description. Let's do today's program starting now. All right, so let's just make sure we cover the first thing up front, and that is that the House is going to take a break and they're going to go home early for Christmas, and we are right on the eve of the release of the Epstein files. Do you guys believe that too? Do you also believe that we might also be getting Epstein files starting tomorrow? Me neither. There's a rule that you kind of, it's better to be right than to be first. That goes back to a kind of an old rule that I learned in law enforcement. It's a rule that people who are familiar with Jeff Cooper and the principles of handgun fighting and so on, that you can say it a couple different ways. One of the ways is, what do they say? They say that speed is great, but accuracy is final. Or Jeff Cooper's way, I think I'm quoting Jeff Cooper properly, and he was a famous special forces guy, and he was a colonel in the Army, kind of developed modern handgun fighting technique. He would say that you cannot miss your way out of a gunfight. And what that is to say is that you can't get to your holster, pull the weapon system, be the first one on the trigger, and get the first round out of the barrel that doesn't hit anything, because it's irrelevant. A miss is a miss. And somebody who takes their time, lines up the shot, takes that shot center of mass, the first one to draw blood in a gunfight is the 88% most likely person to win that gunfight. Now, we're not doing duels at high noon, but you could take that sort of analogy. It's better to be accurate and it's better to be on target than it is to be first. And we could apply that to a lot of things. So I don't need to be the first one to say this, but I do think that we're probably going to be both at the beginning of it. And if we're being fair, we can look at previous performance and it can dictate what we expect the future to hold. And I don't think we're going to get any Epstein files. That's what I think. I think that this Newsweek story saying that House Republicans are calling an early release and they're heading out, and they mention, of course, that there are, in fact, Epstein files supposed to be released tomorrow. That's been passed into federal law. A lot of that has to do with the fact that yeah, there's no reason to believe that we're going to see a change in the types of things that were going on, which was a big fight. You saw the Senate and the House leadership concerned about passing this thing. They got kind of like suckered into it. It went faster than they wanted, and it didn't have the verbiage that they were excited about, the leadership, which means we have Epstein Transparency, is what's called the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was signed into law on November the 19th. They essentially had 30 days, and now we're there. Tom Massey was one of the people that pushed this forward. Ro Khanna is another. We're going to touch that real quickly. I don't think Tom Massey thinks these are coming out either. This is from his interview with Free the People and Jim Kibbe on Blaze.
And as soon as it passed the House, 427-1, Speaker Johnson assured everybody that this would get modified in the Senate, that it was a terrible piece of legislation, and that we just needed to get it through, and that the Senate would fix it. Well, what did the Senate do? John Thune said, no, thank you. We think you've showed us with your 427-1 vote, this bill doesn't need any changes. And so they did unanimous consent that within hours of it passing in the House. We didn't even send them the bill yet. It didn't get to them until 10 a.m. the next day. But the night before, they had a vote to say, whenever the bill gets here, it's already passed. We're going to go ahead and deem it passed when it gets here.
Yeah.
So they passed it before they had it. I've never seen the Senate move that quickly. And then it went over to the White House, and there was no bill signing. And there was a lot of speculation that, you know, he has a certain number of days to sit on it if he wants. So there was speculation that he was sitting on this because there was no bill signing. The reality is he signed it the second it got there. Like once this thing started moving, it moved like a freight train.
Okay, so it moved like a freight train, and then I think it went off the rails. This is NBC reporting DOJ must release the Epstein files by this Friday, risk repercussions. That's what the law's co-author, Ro Khanna of California, Democrat. Again, him and Tom Massey put this thing together. He says he expects to find certain things in the files, warned that a future president could charge DOJ officials who don't comply with the law. A future president. That tells you a lot, doesn't it? This president's not going to charge anybody. Is he going to go after Pam Bondi or Kash Patel for a failure to release things? That's an open-ended question, and I think the answer most likely is no. It's not rhetorical. That's an open question, but I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out no. And what will Congress do? And I think this is where it gets really interesting for those people who are gaming out these different scenarios. One of the sponsors of the law requiring the release of the Epstein investigative files relating to sex offender Jeffrey Epstein says he's given the Justice Department the benefit of the doubt that it will make the files public on Friday, warning that there will be repercussions if it doesn't. Well, what would those repercussions be? Really, the only power that the Article 1 branch of government has is the power of the purse. That's what you can do over the executive. So you've got to tell me that someone is going to cut funding to DOJ or to FBI. That's the argument. That's the power. That's the repercussions. Is someone going to go after them and maybe arrest former? I think that's actually baked into the cake at this point. Call me crazy. But I think that whenever the next Democrat administration comes in, they've already set the precedent here. The Trump administration did. They went after Jim Comey. They said that he was a scumbag, so they arrested him. They didn't like him. They didn't like his speech. Protected speech, by the way, like putting shells on the ground or taking a picture of it. That is protected speech. It's stupid. I think it's juvenile. I think it's beneath what the FBI would do. And apparently they arrested copycats, but not Jim Comey over that. So that tells you a lot. But I think it's baked into the cake that the future DOJ, the future FBI, will in fact go after people that are in this administration at many levels. I think that pane of glass has already been established. Look, they already showed you they'd go after Donald Trump. He was the former president. You think they're not going to go after former members of the cabinet or sub-cabinet? I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think that's prognostication. I think that's just easy analysis. You've got Ro Khanna saying that Justice Department officials have not responded to any requests for information about how and when the files would be made public. Do you guys think the government gets something done between today it's about almost 9 o'clock Central? So that's what, almost about 10 o'clock Eastern time. Do we think that they're going to do something between 10 o'clock and tomorrow at close of business? We're going to suddenly see this flurry of activity, and I've heard nothing about it. We know that they've done a lot of the redactions already, so theoretically they could make a lot of this stuff available. But what are we even going to get out of that? What is the expectation? And who's going to be accountable? Who's going to go in there and say, well, we've audited what you had and we've decided that you've released what you could? Does anyone have that ability at Congress? I don't think so. The law requires DOJ to make all these files public by December 19. I guess that's till not close of business, but maybe end of day. So, just before midnight tomorrow. But I think expecting that this is going to be the case, I think is ridiculous. Only because we can see that they've basically dragged their feet. We've had multiple promises on this, starting in the campaign and then moving into the actual early stages of the Trump second presidency. This is the Epstein files are on my desk. This is we're going to release the unredacted footage and it shows what it shows, but then it doesn't show what it says. It's the guys that look like they've got a gun pointed at them off camera, where Cash and Dan get out there and talk to Maria Bartiromo on their first on-screen interview with Fox. Sorry. I don't think this is going to play well, folks. I don't think it goes anywhere. And you're not getting comment from DOJ. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed the Justice Department for its entirety of its Epstein files by August the 19th. The Justice Department later told the panel that it needed more time, and it eventually turned over more than 33 pages to the panel. A lot of them were redacted, as we remember. There's a spirit of the law, there's a letter of the law, and then there's what's going to happen. And it's kind of like, what do they say? This reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean, that little scene where Johnny Depp is at the back and he's negotiating with Orlando Bloom. And he says, essentially we're now in a space where we're out in the middle of the ocean and there are no rules except what I can do and what you can do. And I think this is the executive calling the bluff. They never wanted this thing out there. Mike Johnson expected it to be, curtailed dramatically. The bill did not come out, as Tom Massey says, the way that they thought it was going to be. And now I think you're going to see exactly what happens, which is that the executive just goes like this. We talked about it yesterday on InfoWars. What do you call this other than a constitutional crisis? If the executive refuses to enforce laws that were written by the legislature or legislative branch, then what do you got? You got a dysfunctional government. I mean, that actually just acknowledges the reality that we all know. And if Congress is not willing to pull a penny from any of these agencies, then what incentive do they have to comply? It's an open question. It's kind of like when you make a threat to your toddler and then you don't follow through on it. I mean, my son makes me I make threats to my son and then I have to carry him out because I'm not going to be the guy that teaches my son the wrong lesson. The executive branch has learned the wrong lesson from this legislature, which, by the way, is substantially the same as every legislature for the last, 30 years. We have incumbents basically take up the entirety of both the House and the Senate. So unless people age out or die out Dianne Feinstein style, or people go, what Chuck Grassley, where they're 90,000 years old and they remember what happened in the 1920s when they were also in office. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Should we really expect them to have learned something different? Congress talks big. The executive just decides to do what they want to do. And then they fund it entirely. This is why I was pro-government shutdown, folks, from the beginning. This is why Trump's speech landed hollow to me. Because you can make promises, but I don't really need to even hear your promises. Imagine if you just showed up and started doing. You ever see those videos? They're on YouTube sometimes. It'll be a guy, he knocks on the door, he says, hey, looks like your yard's in bad shape. I help people's yards for free. Can I help you out with your yard? And people go, okay, yeah. Some old lady, it's like a 95-year-old black couple living in some crappy neighborhood where they just couldn't handle their yard work anymore. Or some, there's some dude in his 30s, but he's disabled and he lives by himself and he doesn't have a lawnmower or a diet, or he doesn't have the money or whatever. And then you see this guy and they set up these video cameras. They do the time lapse, right? And they run around. They're like, it's really compelling because you're like, oh, there's nothing better than going from chaos to order, seeing weeds everywhere to seeing it mowed and trimmed and edged and hedged properly and carrying off and carting off and people using rakes and pulling it all into big piles and putting it in the back of a truck. And suddenly you go from like this crappy jungle kudzu yard and then it's like a house, respectable. You can put up an American flag. Everybody feels good about it. It's really compelling to watch those videos. I don't really like doing yard work, but when I start doing it, I'm like, oh, I gotta get this done, right? We like to see it go from disorder to order. But those people don't ever go out there and make big promises like, I'm gonna make your house look amazing. I'm gonna do an awesome job. You're gonna see the best thing ever. Can I do this thing? They go, hey, can I help you out? It looks like you got a problem. I'd love to fix it. And then they go out there and then they massively overperform. Those people get it. Under promise, over deliver. Donald Trump is the opposite. He's the exact opposite. And so I've got a fact-checking article about what he said, and I think the Epstein files are a big piece of it. They talked really big. Last night, Donald Trump called everybody to the White House, he said, and we all thought we were going to go to war. Everybody thought there was going to be a war with Venezuela. That's what they thought he was going to announce. And I think I've got a clip of that, of him standing there saying something that was kind of awkward. And everyone went like, oh boy, is it time? Are we mad about oil? Is that what's happening here? There's an issue about how they grabbed our stuff a long time ago. Okay, I'm tracking you. And then suddenly you go, oh, he's not going to talk about that. He's actually going to talk about something else. This is why we thought there might be a declaration of war last night. He said this.
Blockade, not going to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through. You remember they took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back. But they took it. They illegally took it.
I mean, that was decades ago that Venezuela sort of nationalized things. That's what he's talking about. They nationalized certain resources. There were American companies that had some oil leases and so on, and they had access to natural resources, but they took it because they naturalized everything, and they basically voted, well, you're doing business in a foreign country, and it's their laws, and I guess that's a risk you take. So we're going to go to war at that? We're going to bomb boats. We're going to set up a blockade, and we're going to pirate some of their ships and do whatever other things. Now, granted, I think the United States can win that. I think George Hill was telling me this, not yesterday, but a couple days prior. He said the difference between being a pirate and a privateer, which makes you a hero, where you're a millionaire or a billionaire, the difference between piracy and privateering is whether or not your side wins. But if you're part of my generation, if you're in your, let's say late 30s, or you're in your 40s, or probably if you're in your 50s and you were serving previously, like, that we already did some wars for oil. And I don't think there's a huge appetite for that right now. And not a lot of us want to go send our kids into that sort of thing. So I hope they don't do that. That's not what he announced. Instead, he announced that everything is great. America is solved. Stop complaining, all of you. So here's an ABC fact-checking of presidential claims made during the address. He brought down gas prices and groceries and so on. So this was a year-end address, I suppose. And it fell flat to me. It felt like he was speed reading. It didn't feel like he had a lot of charisma. It felt like the things he was saying were sort of like formulaic. He didn't have any sort of... he didn't have any energy behind it. It wasn't the Donald Trump that you're used to. He got in and got out. It was a 17-minute speech that basically spoke at the speed that I normally deliver words, which is, it's something. He's certainly more competent to deliver a speech than Joe Biden, but that's such a low bar. Here we go. Donald Trump said during his presidential address on Wednesday night that the administration is, quote, bringing our economy back from the brink of ruin, claiming that he's brought prices back down across the board. Open question to you. Feel free to respond to it either in the chat. Some of you are watching live. Feel free to respond to it in comments below. Timestamp it, or at least tell me what the heck you're talking about. Has Donald Trump brought prices back to the point where everything is good now? Do you see that the bag of coffee that you used to buy for $11 is not $18 now? Because I don't. I just don't. Are the things that you used to buy back into some affordable range? Can you look at a vehicle and say, I can afford to buy a new vehicle if my vehicle goes, tits up and fails on me? Is that feasible? When I was a kid, you could buy a brand new work truck, a brand new one, factory stripped down. Yeah, but for like $15,000. Today, a work truck is in the 40s. Is that going backwards? Are prices declining on things that you need? A vehicle to get places. I remember 99-cent gasoline. I remember them dropping the prices pretty amazingly. I was blown away during the first administration. Have those things happened? Have we reversed the course of the 9% month-on-month inflation that happened under Biden? I'm not giving the guy blame for it. I'm just saying, don't tell me that you solved the problem when the problem continues. You can say I'm working on it. You can say we've got our top men on it. That would be okay too. But that's not what happened. He said, quote, I'm bringing those high prices down and bringing them down very fast. Very fast. He's got the hands, right? Let's look at the facts. He made sweeping claims about prices from gasoline to groceries to airfare and to hotel fares and flights, compared the current prices against the Biden administration. That's not the status. Compare them to when we wanted them to be. If you're a president that's selling nostalgia and your goal was to go and say, we did such a great job that you're going to see America be sort of the great thing that it was again. I'm going to tell you, I think the high point was somewhere between mid 1980s and mid to late 1990s. Maybe that's because that's when I was a kid and things look really good. But I remember People seemed like they were doing well. There were obviously people who struggled, but America kind of had purpose. They felt like they'd won the Cold War. There was a lot of hope. There was a significant amount of expectation of a great future. I think a lot of that got dashed after 9/11 when they started clamping things down again. But if you want to make America great again, if you want to appeal to a time when things were pretty awesome, I think we had basically handled racism and a lot of the social strife. I think that we had an equality that I don't even think is great at this point as an adult. But at that point, I mean, that was what was being sold, and they delivered on it. People had opportunity. All kinds of wild things were happening. If you want to make that claim, then go out there and do that again. When I was a kid growing up, if you were to go buy an article of clothing, the odds are that the clothing said Made in America on it when I was growing up. I'm not that old. I mean, I don't even have that much gray in my beard, although I talked to Viva Frey the other day, and he's like, are we about the same age? And man, I've got a lot more gray. It's like, okay, well, clean living and a pure heart, my brother. End of the day, what I'm getting at is that there are underwear that were part of a costume that my mom made for Halloween when I was probably, I don't know, 5, 6 years old or something like that. It was like one of those like Superman, like you wear your underwear outside of the tights kind of deal. They were made in America. They were fruit of the loom, and they were all made here. And so Donald Trump made these promises that they were going to bring these things back. Now, did I think that was necessarily feasible? I don't know, but I didn't make the claim. He did. So I'll hold him accountable to the words that he said. What percentage of them actually came true? And I'm going to end today with about 6 minutes of a speech that Donald Trump made as his final appeal to the American people in October of 2016. And I want you to judge what they claim here in this particular article versus what he promised would happen. And I don't care that there was a pandemic. I really don't. Because who was president during that pandemic? And who let advisors and a bunch of people push him around and have horrible policies and 2 weeks to slow the spread, and we're going to shut down America, the entirety of the America. It's the craziest thing you've ever heard. If you went out there and briefed that, people would be like, this is a shitty movie. This is an unbelievable apocalyptic movie. You're going to cut down the entirety of the American economy for a short period of time, and then you're going to fire it up again like a generator? You're going to just crank pull it and we're going to get going? No. And we all know that we lived through that, and that was crazy. But so many people make excuses instead of like touting results. And I think that's critical. And that is a hallmark of the Trump administration. Claiming we did something without doing it, making excuses for no particular reason because you failed. There's a lot of failure out there. It's not because the intentions are bad, and it's not because I think that his plan was bad. I was like, yeah, do all of that, do it harder and faster, right? That's the funniest part about it. We can agree with the people on the left that Donald Trump is not doing a great job, but we won't agree for the same reasons. They'll be like, he's a fascist, he's a tyrant, he's doing all this horrible stuff. I'm like, he's not doing the horrible stuff enough. Go harder. Act like you act like your life and my children's life depends on it. Please, will you please? Because this government is not getting any less. And what they did is they just claimed Dan Bongino. So whether we're here and saying, well, Dan screwed up, I'll just go to full screen for a second. Whether you're saying he blew it and he went in there and he was proud and it was hubris, and I do think that's all true, I still wanted the guy to win, because if he wins, we all win. Everything's forgiven. If you go out there and you slay a dragon, I don't care if you're the biggest a-hole in the world. You slay the dragon, you get the credit. But as Alex Jones was telling me last night, this sort of Spartan ethos, come back carrying your shield or on it. Fight honorably and win, or die trying. Walking away after less time than I was on unpaid suspension. I literally was suspended from the FBI. Me, not Garrett O'Boyle, who did 1,000+ days, years of it. I'm talking about me, the guy that's sitting in front of you here. I was suspended without pay for longer than Dan Bongino even worked for the FBI. I stuck it out on a suspension to prove a point, unpaid, longer than that guy got paid as a senior executive, and cried about his poor $200,000+ a year paycheck because he could have been making millions. Piss right off. I looked at Rumble stock today. His Rumble stake is worth like $165 million that he didn't buy. They gave it to him to bring his show over. Okay. Let's go back to this thing real quick. Actually, let's do a read for our friends at Silent. Let's pay a bill real quick. It's a bill that I don't mind paying. You know why? Because I really like their stuff. And this is the Christmas season. So maybe you are looking for some kind of a thing that a man in your life might like, or maybe you're a woman who doesn't like government tracking. And you'll know that the tracking device is always on you. You didn't even have to go out there and have a government warrant. You're literally walking around with it. They can buy your data. And that's government agencies. The big tech corporations will do it as well. The advertisers, corporate data brokers that want to go and sell it off because that's what these agreements mean in your terms of service. And even cyber criminals, they can get a piece of your digital footprint. They don't have to ask because you already volunteered it under terms of service, and then they just take it or they buy it. And what do? Yeah, they track you. Sometimes they could use it for remote access. They pattern who you are. Maybe they want to scam you. Silence Faraday gear blocks all of the wireless signals. That means that you get to temporarily be off the grid on your terms. And it's cellular, and it's Wi-Fi, and it's Bluetooth, it's GPS, it's radio frequency ID, and it's near field communications. It's all of the things that come out of that phone. You simply just put them in the Silent Faraday flag. You flip the lid over there, and then that's it. And the best thing is they don't leak and they don't give it up, which is not the case for all of these things. If you buy one cheaper, they oftentimes will leak. I know that from testing them. Silent is slnt.com/KYLE. Using my name saves you 15% on your purchase. Most of them are going to qualify for free shipping, which is great. They ship quickly. I've got something inbound right now that I'll show you guys pretty soon, something I'm interested in trying out. So sometimes I check out the products and say, what's coming my way? Yeah, we're going to get the Sling for those of you who carry a gun and want to sometimes be off the grid. Nothing better. All right, it's available to protect your family, give you a little bit of quiet, own your own digital footprint, drop your phone into the Silent Faraday sleeve like we do to start this show, and you can become silent as well. slnt.com/KYLE. Check the link in the show description. Please do that if you guys are interested. Good stuff. All right, let's do the fact checking as we go through, okay? Here it is. Gas prices. It's true that gas prices hit an all-time high in June of 2022 under Biden with an average fuel cost of $5.01 per gallon per AAA. According to AAA, the new average is about $2.99, almost $3. It's like a rounding up there. That'd be a 50% decrease from the highest point. Great. But you can also compare them to where they were in September of 2024, and the gas prices are only down 0.5%. That actually rings more true to me. In fact, that's the part that I wanted to hone in on. Just because you go out there and talk about whatever the worst was under Biden and the best under you, that's not really fair when people do it. You do it basically seasonal and year on year. Okay, how about airfare? The costs were up 3.2% in September under the Trump administration. We had a shutdown. There were some things that compounded that, so you got that as well. Hotel room rates are down 0.8%. Rental prices on cars down 5%, if you believe these guys. Look, this is a left-wing fact-checking. They're going to go out there and try to point out that Trump was wrong. But it doesn't also, like, if you sit there and look at what's going on with your with the cost in your own groceries and the things that you spend money on, I don't think you're going to find that this thing is out of line. Average price for a dozen grade A eggs was $3.49 in September. It's down from the all-time high of $6.23, 43% increase, or decrease rather. And then they have an excuse for Biden here, which is funny. The eggs were heavily affected by avian flu. Oh, were they? Okay, cool. Meat prices have gone up on the past year. That's what I've experienced as well. Beef prices are at a record high, 14.7%. They've gone up 8.5% in the past year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He doesn't mention coffee. Coffee is up about 19% year on year. And that's what I've experienced as well. But I've been experiencing this go up since Biden. Remember, if they cut inflation, which is what the claim has been for the Trump administration. Oh, we cut inflation. It's only now down at the lowest rate. It's down at 1 or 2%. That means that inflation is still ongoing. What they've done is they've just taken their foot off the gas from someone ramming it where we were getting 9% inflation and everything was going crazy. And now it's only going at like 1 or 2%. That's not really the victory that everybody wanted. Donald Trump's claim and his big push that when he went out and said, we're going to make something great again, that's a U-turn. That means we missed our stop on the highway and we're going to take the Texas turnabout. You guys know what those are? If you live in another state and you've never seen these, Oklahoma has them as well. Texas turnabouts. You get off the exit, you get to stay in the far left lane, and there's a dedicated lane that goes underneath the highway and it flips back around and it gets you going right back on the feeder route, and bam, you're right back on the highway. It takes you 1 second when you miss. So maybe you have to go an extra mile down the line, you can turn around. We did not do a U-turn. Donald Trump promised a U-turn, and what he gave us was foot off the gas. I think that's fair. I'll bring up the chat up here. Prices are not down. Crude oil's at its lowest in years, but it's still expensive here. Yep, okay. Look, I'm looking at this stuff and you guys are saying the same thing, which is why, like, I'm a regular guy. I'm not worth $100 million or $200 million. I'm not a billionaire sitting in the White House. So I'm just a regular person who knows what happens when you don't turn it around and all you did was slow down. You don't get to claim victory, and I wish you wouldn't. That would be more honest. A couple of other things. This is an interesting story coming from CBS News, okay? And then we're going to get into the Epstein stuff here. Washington's homeless hide in plain sight, growing sicker and costing taxpayers more, is a really interesting little blip. This is written by Angela Hart. It says, as night falls. I always felt this way when I lived in D.C., by the way. When I lived outside of Washington, D.C., when I worked in Washington, D.C. regularly, I was blown away. Who's the person that they talk about? His name is Abdullah Ibrahim. Got it. All right. Night falls, temperatures drop. He erected a tent, builds a fire beneath a canopy of pine and hemlock and cedars. That sounds kind of idyllic, except he's doing it in a park in Washington, D.C. He evades authorities by rotating the use of 3 different tents with 3 different colors at 3 different campsites. At daybreak, he rolls up his shelter, dismantles it, rolls up his belongings, and hides them for the next day. They don't see you if you're in the woods, he said. But you have to make sure it's broken down by morning or they'll find you. He's conducting an extended evasion to make sure that he can keep doing this thing, living out in the streets. There he is. He's on the screen right now. He's homeless on the streets of DC. I saw so many like working age black men who were sleeping on streets, were sitting against buildings, government buildings, doing absolutely nothing at all hours. And when it started getting colder and getting rougher outside, I always wondered, like, who wants to live like this? Some of these people are doing it by choice. Some of them have mental illness, but it is a great indicator of how flawed and weak and broken some of our society is, where you've got homeless vets sleeping on the streets in the nation's capital. That's what we need to accept. And that is a compassionate position. I'm not a big fan of homeless people being anywhere. I don't think it's great, and I don't want them around my family because their choices are probably dangerous. And then, all the things that go along with being homeless. I have the same instinct. I worked with the homeless as a paramedic. I know what that is about. But is that not an indicator of health of the nation when you have homeless people sleeping in the capital of your nation, where they're handing out hundreds of millions or billions of dollars or tens of billions of dollars to foreign nations? Like, what are we doing? How do you make America great again if you've got this guy sleeping in a freaking tent and he's rotating? And he sounds competent enough. Maybe he's not, but he sounds competent enough to understand what he's doing. He's rotating his things. He knows how to evade the park police and the Washington, D.C. Metro PD. There are 5,100 homeless people in Washington, D.C., including in their temporary shelters. That's not a win. City officials estimate that in August, nearly 700 were living outdoors without tents or shelter. Well, you can do that in August in D.C., although it's pretty gross and it's kind of swampy. Just saying, it does tell you a lot about the nation's health. You want to see if we're winning? Look at the most vulnerable, see whether they're winning, see whether their numbers are decreasing. And I'm not confident they are. All right. I've got some other stuff too. Let's talk about the Brown shooting, because that's been a great sort of disconnect for Americans. We talked yesterday with George Hill. George Hill mentioned this woman's salary, which is apparently north of $3 million a year, $63,000 a week was his claim. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how much money this woman actually makes, but we're having a real difficult time with simple things that we expect our law enforcement to be able to do. And we keep having high profile failures. It is not common that someone goes on, even a mass shooting of any kind. Like, how many times have we had a manhunt for a mass shooter? I'd like numbers on that, but I can't think of any from my recollection. And I follow this kind of stuff, and maybe you guys do too. Here's the president of Brown University talking about this. I got a handful of clips from the ongoing chaos from the last couple of days. And I do think it's an indicator of a bigger and broader problem. Like, we accept failure and we're happy to just have press conferences explaining it away. It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right now. Somebody is cheering this lady on. I'm sure of it. She hasn't lost her job yet, right?
Believe some web pages for students or faculty have been taken down. Is that a response to any external threats to anyone in the community?
We have been working very closely with law enforcement to provide them with all of the internal to Brown information that they need to do this investigation. It's their investigation. They're the professionals. So we're providing information. We're not in the job of reviewing it for them. I know nothing about web pages being taken down as part of this. It's the first I've heard of it.
In the back.
That's all I got. I'm going to step away. It is like sort of a comedy of errors that we keep seeing out there. This is theoretically a very prestigious university. This is a place where people should be able to go and be safe, where it costs you $100,000. That's a pretty exclusive club to be in, $100,000 a year. And we don't know what we're doing. We're not involved in this. It's not our fault. Everybody wants to pass the blame. Everybody wants to talk about how great they are right up to the point when something goes wrong. And then you got whatever's going on in this video. I have 2 versions of it. One of them, I'm going to play you with the audio. So if you're listening right now, you're not going to miss anything. But if you're watching right now, you're going to get something. I don't know who created this requirement. Why do we have to have sign language interpreters? This feels like a comedy bit. Watch the sign language interpreter if you're listening right now. If you are watching on one of the video platforms, whether it be Rumble or YouTube or on X, or if you're over on Spotify and you're doing the replay, this is a time for you to go to the video version, because this is absolutely hysterically bizarre. And it makes this whole thing look like, it looks like a Mel Brooks film at this point. Can we agree on that? If this looks like if a comedy writer from my childhood was writing this, this is as bad as Robin Hood Men in Tights or, Blazing Saddles or whatever else. The lady doing the sign language. Here we go. Ready? She is the hag mime character, Hagmime character. Ready, go.
There is no footage. I'll try to say it again. There is no footage that depicts this individual that would be useful in identifying him that we have not released to you. And I think you can tell from, frankly, the not very helpful quality of the initial footage that our standard is pretty low. If we thought it was at all helpful, we would have and will release it. There is no footage.
All right, we're going to put him in the background now because that's borderline hysterical. I'm going to loop this if I can. Let me make sure I've got it looped, because what on earth is she doing? What is this about? Yeah, it's on loop. She's doing the is this footage? Is feet, is clawing motions? Is that footage like a scurrying animal? So what they've said is that we've got nothing. You've seen it. We got shots of a fat guy wearing a two-tone hoodie. That's definitely not George Hill. That's it. Sorry, we're doing the best we can do, and what we have is basically nothing. We have nothing you can see, and the only thing that we can show you is this crazy lady standing next to a guy who's trying to look serious. A bunch of dour-looking faces from law enforcement, from the university, from the political management of the area. And then Hagmime is doing like some negotiation. I feel like she's doing a comedy show right there. And she's also saying the words while making funny faces, like over-enunciated. Are there not closed captions for people that are deaf? Not to be insensitive, but like deaf people. If there's anybody deaf that listens to this program, I think we do closed captions in some of them. Probably not. I think you can find them though. I think Spotify has transcripts, so you can read along. YouTube does a transcript. Who is the audience for this person? And they're talking about they've got no good pictures. So let's address the picture problem, the camera problem. We've been told that there are many cameras at that university. How dare you question the cameras at the university? They're amazing, but they also don't have pictures, but they also don't know if they have any pictures, but they definitely don't have any better pictures to release, which is why this guy's still on the loose. Here we go. Ready? This.
We have 1,200 cameras located throughout the campus. We don't publish the locations of the cameras. That would give a map to somebody to evade detection on the cameras. So that would be counterproductive to do that. There are cameras in this building, and as I answered the previous question, we have turned over all evidence that we are holding at Brown to law enforcement and are cooperating fully with them.
So you're saying that there's a camera, you're saying there's cameras in the building. I was told yesterday there wasn't cameras in the building. The Attorney General said, old building, no cameras, attached to a new building with cameras.
I believe he said that there were two different phases of the building that might have two different levels of technology. Again, all video imagery has been turned over to law enforcement.
That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense at all, does it? Yeah, that's the best you've got. There's footage inside the building, which means it's controlled. It's got a dialed in amount of light. The real issue with outdoor cameras, if you guys don't understand this, if you never tried to do surveillance footage, they're all independently pointed in not the place that you hope they would to capture the thing you need. So I've done this reviewing camera footage, looking for bank robbers or going after people that were robbing armored cars. And you find out that it's like not a great angle, so it doesn't catch the license plate of the car that goes by that makes the turn that you needed. Or you don't get to see inside the windshield because of the way that it's set up. Or it doesn't have like a really great adjustment, so it's doing auto gain where it's adjusting the brightness and the aperture and the exposure levels. So you don't get awesome pictures that are high detailed and high res the way that you're looking at me right now if you're on the video. So it doesn't have that. But when you're in a controlled indoor environment, there's basically only going to be two settings, lights on, lights off. They're consistent. So you can actually set the white balance properly, and you can actually set the exposure to handle what it is. And you can zoom into the place where the things are interesting. People can only enter and egress in certain ways. They come into a hallway from one end, they exit the other end. They go into these doors, they come out of these doors. There's not that many choke points when you're looking at indoor cameras. So setting them up should actually be pretty logical. And there's people who do this for a living. I mean, we talked to Enrique Tarrio. Access control points. This is the way that you do security. And when you do video, you do the same thing. So they should have better video than they have. And we're left to the online speculation. There's unlimited amounts of Fox News speculation right now. And they're dunking on this because it's a liberal university. But I mean, at the end of the day, there are people going out that are just saying things that every one of you says. You guys could all be on Fox News. Somebody knows who this guy is. Yeah, no shit. Like, why is that commentary on national news? They have nothing to report. And so anyway, this is all more slop. We talked about it yesterday. I showed you sort of the trough. We're in this period where you can just lie to us with whatever you want. And if you cheer on the side, are there people that are pulling their money out of Brown University right now? Are there people that are pulling their kids out that are going like, what have I been paying for? I mean, you don't expect there to be a mass shooting, but if there is, you'd think that the cameras in a week would be functional and that people would have like some sort of idea what's going on. This wasn't like something that happened in a urban area in the dark of night when nobody was around because it was in the middle of COVID and they were hooded and walking around on night vision cameras and sneaking like a pipe bomber in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's not what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about somebody evading law enforcement and being able to just hide behind the fact that they had a mask and Washington, D.C. cameras. We're talking about cameras at an elite university that costs $100,000 a year. So what sort of security are they buying? Why do they have a guy who moved here that has a thick accent, even though he's been in the United States since he was 13 years old? I mean, this is not the same thing as some of those where we can make some excuses. This didn't happen 5 years ago on January 5th or January 6th of 2021. That's not what happened. This is stuff that is in a cutting edge facility that has a $8 billion endowment. And they can't do any better than that. What are we even showing on the screen right now, guys? What's going on there? Is this the stuff that we got from the InfoWars crew yesterday? That's like a person walking after half a mile on January the 5th with a sort of pronounced limp on the right leg, wearing a hood and a mask. We know why that person wasn't solved. It's different, right? You start thinking that these people can get away from it as long as they have the right people that are not willing to look into it in competency. So I'm leaning more and more towards, and this is a real sad thing. I told this to George Hill the other day, and he said, I don't even want to contemplate this. But is it possible that the resources that we've got from our Federal Bureau of Investigation, from the state police there, that they're rolling out the B teams on purpose to embarrass somebody, whoever that person is? Maybe someone doesn't like the university president. Maybe somebody is trying to make the FBI director look worse. I don't know. I'm honestly now in maybe like a 30-70 position, 30% chance that this is intentional, that they can't find who they're looking for, because this is not the agency that we're talking about. Didn't they find like a VIN number underneath the rubble of the first World Trade Center bombing, a partial VIN number, and track it back to a contract where someone rented a car and then run these guys down in like a week? I don't know. When I look at that was in 1993. Why was the FBI in 1993 with weak, horrible, 480p cameras that you couldn't recognize anything? Why were they able to run down suspects so fast and so competently? And then you've got a pipe bomber who we're still negotiating whether they got the right person 5 years later, and somebody shot up a premier university for a lot of money is not going into apparently the camera system. I don't like that just asking questions, but I mean, it does make us ask some questions. And then you get this from Fox. Somebody knows him.
There are people that know who this person is, and this person will make mistakes. They always do, and they're going to talk, and it's going to get out there, and we need the public's help on this. I can't exercise that opinion enough.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like we're very far down the road on identifying the perpetrator behind this horrible act at Brown University.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we're very far down the road. That seems like a common thing we keep hearing about, right? We keep finding out that they're not doing the job we expected. And that does kind of blow my mind. All right. I got a couple other little wacky things here. I think this is also, what is this Fox News piece here? This is, they don't know the numbers. We're going to run this clip real quick. This is more Fox News giving you the same thing about cameras and questions. We're getting questions, but what we're not getting is like people saying like, hey, we're on this. Nobody trusts the law enforcement. That's what you're seeing. All these press conferences are proving it.
Fox News alert. It's been almost 5 days since a gunman shot up one of the most prestigious universities in the world and got away with it. No one knows where the shooter is, who he is, or what he looks like. After days of no answers and no leads, Brown students are angry.
The general mood I've been feeling is like getting the air knocked out of you. It's pretty sad on campus. We have been concerned and confused and hoping that there's more progress in the case. There's definitely uneasiness with the gunman not being in custody.
That sounds right. Yeah, there's uneasiness. The good news is, as we played yesterday, I'm going to show you some slop. We're going to do the cover story now. That the grown-ups are in charge, the adults have control, the most competent people are going to be there, and nobody seems any bit comforted by that. This was announced yesterday.
Thankfully, I can report tonight the FBI has stepped in a major way. They are now assisting in the location of the suspect, and given the recent track record of the FBI under the helm of Kash Patel, I imagine we will soon have more answers in spite of regular media smears against him.
God forbid the regular media smears against him. You know, the track record of him is standing on its own. The track record is he came in and promised something. So let's pivot to the story. Yesterday, we get Donald Trump going out and announcing Dan Bongino's done. He's going to shut it down. That is this FBI, right? That we're supposedly a differential from that FBI. We're supposed to believe that there's some big differential. Well, the big differential has been, the promise was that a bunch of people, a guy wrote a book about it, we're going to get government deep state gangster types that were going to be taken out and they were going to be put in handcuffs. And we were going to see justice and accountability and de-weaponization and depoliticization. We were going to see the sort of dangerous part of the government reined in and taken back to its original mission. And what we saw is basically like some real thirsty people claim credit for things that they didn't even do. Like, I'm pretty sure that Kash Patel went out there and announced that he single-handedly saved the day out in Utah when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And the guy turned himself in and had to do with his parents. You don't have to believe the official story. I'm just going to tell you real simply. If the parents go along with it and they're like, yeah, our son did this thing, that's kind of telling, isn't it? They didn't get to everybody, whatever the hell that means. If the parents go along with it, it says something. Contrast that with the Brian Cole story, the pipe bomber story in January 2021. I spoke to his mother, and she's like, my baby didn't do this. The grandmother, they're outraged. They've hired defense attorneys. They're out there working to fight against this. Right? If you turn your son over and you're like, my kid's a dirtbag, he does dirtbag things, that's different than saying, I think my kid was set up, and I'm going to protest on behalf of his innocence. Okay? There's a big difference there. Those are not the same. One of them is a 5-year-old case where somebody was desperate for a win and they gave it to the deputy director on his birthday. And then Donald Trump, not a few days later, what was that? That was 2 weeks ago or less. Here's Trump basically letting the cat out of the bag, whether he was supposed to or not, makes the announcement the same day that I said it was going to happen. I told you guys 48 hours ago when I was talking to Alex Jones that was the word we had. It was coming out now. And he's apparently going to leave on January the 3rd. And he's going to leave a loser on this. Because he's going to leave a case that he apparently hung his reputation on. And his answer is going to be, we got the guy, but we're on chapter 1 of 20. So he left the door open for them to say we got the wrong guy. Even Mike Benz is out there saying, well, obviously this is a patsy. Mike Benz, former State Department guy, very bright, been on the show twice, like Mike Benz. Mike Benz is a chess player. From everything I can tell, the people that are running the FBI right now don't even play checkers. They barely play tic-tac-toe, which you can get a chicken to do in Brooklyn, my wife informs me. Donald Trump dropping the news yesterday.
Oh, Dan did a great job. I think he wants to go back to his show. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I do. I think he wants to go back to his show. Look, I knew he wanted to go back to his show. Wouldn't you want to go back to your show? What's the alternative? I wouldn't want to go back and work for the FBI right now. Certainly not at that level. I interviewed Kurt Suzdak about it, who's been around FBI headquarters, spent time around there for a while. It's a 12, maybe 14, 16-hour-a-day job to be the FBI deputy director. The people who do it are dedicated to the FBI. You got to love the FBI. As much as I could tell about what Dan Bongino said about the Bureau for years, I think he hated the FBI, and rightly so. So did I. That's why I went on his show and talked about it. We could actually list all the dozens of grievances, and we all had the same thing in common. It wasn't even negotiable. I mean, it was like factually, these are the problems. We've identified them. How can this agency continue to exist as it does these injustices? And can he go in there and fix it? Well, it's going to take a ton of hard work. And it's way more hard work to go and fix an FBI or a government agency than running a podcast, which came out in his last Sean Hannity interview, where he said, I used to be paid for my opinions. I'll read that as like, some slop, some BS. A lot of the stuff he did was like Trump administration propaganda. He used to get paid for one thing, but now he gets paid for facts. And the facts are is that he wasn't up to the job. That's what the facts are. The facts are is that he said he was going to go out and solve 3 cases. I know he didn't work those cases individually, but even if he was out there running them, was he looking into the serials and reading them? Or was he letting some idiot that he didn't trust brief him? Real simple. Very simple. He said he was going to find the person who brought cocaine into the Biden White House. Didn't happen. Said he was going to determine who did the leak at the Dobbs decision at the Supreme Court. Did not happen. Said they would find the pipe bomber. Got the wrong guy because we believe that the guy was actually a girl. There's far more of this stuff. There's video camera footage coming out from car accidents that Brian Cole Jr. was involved in. He does not limp. He has no limp, like the pipe bomber had an appreciable gait differential, something the FBI actually pointed out in their early investigation, things you can find in the Loudermilk summary, things that were reported by the Washington Post even recently. What really happened over there is that there was some fire and pressure put on of somebody who was already doing a bad job and not solving the problems, not depoliticizing, but basically being a cheerleader for the same agency that he cheered on destroying previously. A guy that claimed that he had whistleblowers coming to him, that he knew, and then he had good sources inside the FBI, and apparently you couldn't trust any of those people. So there's a big differential between talking and doing. The Trump administration is big on talk. They love it. Prices are down. Everything's great. Your life is awesome. Housing is affordable. All the illegals are gone. Reality, 300,000 people or so are gone. Everything is kind of mediocre on this stuff. Doesn't mean they didn't do like an attempt. They just didn't do what they promised. And you can hold them to their own words. Very simple. Little reminder now, if you guys are watching, make sure you've given us a like on the video. That actually bumps us up on the leaderboards and the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're watching over on YouTube, make sure you guys share it with a friend. I'd appreciate that. Rumble, YouTube, X, all easy places to see it. Locals, it's KyleSeraphin.com if you guys want to join the locals community and interact with the group. We're going to do a call-in show tonight. That'll be fun. We do that at 8 o'clock Eastern time. That's 7 Central. And then lastly, if you are not watching on Spotify in the replay, if you're just listening, you're missing out on the visuals. KyleSeraphinShow.com. Some of the visuals are just like little tongue-in-cheek jokes that you will miss if you are not paying attention. So check us out over there, KyleSeraphinShow.com. If you're an audio listener, give Spotify a chance. I know you don't want a new app, but it actually works really, really well. And nobody has told me that they were like, oh, I prefer the old way. Like, why did you do this to me? Okay, here's a little taste of why. This is the talk is cheap attitude. This is why I like Owen Schroyer. Look, I love Alex Jones. I really do. He's super wild and funny. And when he calls me, I go into another room. And sometimes he calls to tell me about his kids and how we're similar because we've both got 3 girls and a boy, which we're actually in that category together. We have the same number of kids. And sometimes he's like telling me about the deep state sources, whatever else is going on. I also like Owen because Owen is more like me when it comes to pragmatic and being disappointed when people promise me something. This is Owen Schroyer in his car last night after that speech that we saw. And this is the same problem that I think is endemic to the Trump administration. Doesn't matter whether it's Trump or Bongino or a lot of these other people that talk. The people that are doing are not talking. The people that are not doing are saying a lot.
Well, guys, tonight's speech from President Trump was mostly inconsequential. And it kind of makes you wonder what even spurred it, what was even the purpose of it. But nonetheless, it just happened. We all witnessed it. And I think for most fair, honest, neutral observers, we saw the same thing, which was we've never seen Trump like that before. He was not his usual confident self. He seemed to be speed reading. The charisma was gone. The aura was gone. The swagger was gone. And the message was stale. There was nothing new. There were things that he said tonight that can just easily be disproven. Like he said that we only hire Americans now. They literally affirmed 120,000 H-1B visa workers this year. They affirmed the Trump Gold Card, which is about bringing in foreign workers. But none of that even matters. All of that is just slop. If you watched last night, Trump at the White House for the Hanukkah celebration, and then you watched Trump tonight when he's supposed to be addressing the American people, addressing the country, addressing Americans, his voters, his base, it's 2 totally different people. Now, what I think has happened is the reality has finally caught up to Trump, that much of his base has turned on him. The polls that he keeps claiming are fake are very real. And then as far as the agenda is concerned, I don't even know. I don't even know what the agenda is supposed to be.
This is the problem. The mission was too many people messaging a win without actually doing it. And also, after watching that speech last night, it was only 17 minutes, which, as many of you have said, that's a warm-up for Donald Trump. He rocked through it. It probably should have been 20 minutes if he went slowly. And instead, what happened is he rushed through a speech of like stated accomplishments without actually getting there. And at the end of the day, it fit into one of those things that many of us will, if you've ever been in the corporate world, there's nothing worse than somebody calling a meeting together and everybody gets out of their chair and they have to leave a place. Maybe they have to go to another building and you sit down at a conference room and you wait and everybody gets sitting in and everyone's got their coffee and you're waiting there. And then they finally come in, they light the dim the lights, they put on a presentation, and then they just do something that should have been a freaking email. Like, why are we having a meeting when this could have been an email? There were like 12 or 15 bullet points you could have just sent out. This could have been a true social post. So someone told him he needs to do something presidential, step up and do a speech. There's no need for the speech. It was a speech that could have been put out in a social media post. It could have done in a press release. This is what we think. Here's this. He basically gave a shitty State of the Union. If you guys missed it, you missed nothing. You missed a boring, yawning, speed reading, no charisma State of the Union. And he did it on the heels of people expecting there to be war with Venezuela. So people got lured into it. And he did it on the story of the day, which is that one of the people in his administration that a lot of people love and think is a great person and was going to bring change and justice to the deep state that he kept talking about, and that the government sort of control of all of our lives could be reduced because we were going to have a DOJ that was going to be, pulled back. And then you got this. This is slop. Hold on. Do I have the slop? I think I have slop. Slop. This is slop from John Solomon. Patel praises Dan Bongino as being the best partner. FBI deputy director looks to depart. This is slop. I'm going to play you Nick Fuentes, which is funny. I think we've done that a couple times now. Nick Fuentes is a little bit more direct on this thing, and he's not very nice about it. We're going to wrap up with a little bit more on the Bongino thing, only because there are a bunch of talking heads out there claiming this was always the plan. I'm going to show you that they didn't get done what they said. He wasn't the best partner. This is not mission accomplished. You don't get to claim mission accomplished when you arrested a guy and he didn't even get convicted. Nick Fuentes kind of sums up how a lot of people that are kind of hoping for one thing and not seeing it on the other end. There's a reason this guy's really popular. First of all, he's a great communicator. His set is very good. And he's plain spoken. And here's the thing about Nick Fuentes that I can tell. This is the only thing that I know about that guy, having never met him, but I know he pops up places. For independent media, my guess is he's actually independent. Because he doesn't seem to rely on anybody else. He doesn't kiss people's asses to try to have access, which is what John Solomon does. I got some fun John Solomon stuff in a second here, but let's do this thing. This is another commentary on it. So now we got Owen Schroyer, me telling you I thought I was disappointed, Nick Fuentes. We're all different age brackets, by the way. One of us in our 20s, one in our 30s, one in our 40s. We have different experiences. 2 single guys, 1 married guy with kids. I don't think that this is that far off the line. You guys tell me, is the world much better, or is this guy closer to accurate?
And this is why everyone hates Trump now. This is why everyone hates Trump. Everyone hates this administration because it is a scam. It's not even a failure. It's not even an honest failure. It is a scam. We are not getting anything that we have been promised. Think about it. We were promised industrial policy, tariffs, subsidies. They backed down in 1 week. Remember Liberation Day, April 2nd, we're going to liberate ourselves from free trade. We're going to have tariffs on every country. They caved in 1 week and then said, the whole time it was really just about China. Remember that? Another fake out. They said, we're declaring tariffs on every country in the world. And then when the bond market melted down, they said, never mind. It was really just a big trick, and what we always intended to do was to only have tariffs on China and nobody else. Trump always chickens out. Then he said, we're going to deploy the National Guard to Chicago and LA and Memphis and every major city, and we're going to bring law and order to the streets. Then they said, oh, actually, we can't do that. And if we deploy 200 National Guard, that's what we meant. And we're only doing it for 60 days. And it.
I'm going to pull away from what he said there, and there's a much longer clip. You guys want to watch the show? A lot of people do it. That's fine. I don't agree that everybody hates Trump. In fact, I don't think a lot of people that love Trump have changed their opinion. But the points he's making are more important. Again, I think people say things in a way that are sometimes salacious, and it gets, gets clicked like that, and so then we get to talk about it. Not everybody hates Donald Trump, but his point that they announced something and then they went weak. You said something strong, and then you did something much lighter than that. That's not a win. It's much better to say, look, we're going to go out there and we're going to do a really great job, and we're going to make your yard look better. And then they come out and they're like, oh my God, like you've doubled the value of my house. I no longer look like a derelict, right? The analogy of that's why those yard shows are so compelling, because you've transformed something. It's a very low promise. We have no idea what the end result's going to be, but you tell me you're going to make something better. And then you do a lot of it. And then people go, man, that is dramatically better. Like I have more money in my pocket. Like all things are going better. I do like that. I actually did see that in the Trump first administration when I was working for the government. I noticed when the Trump tax cuts hit and I saw that I had more money in my pocket than I did previously. I watched my paycheck go up. I'm in a weird space now where my paycheck is based on, advertisements and a bunch of other kind of things. And I don't have a paycheck. I've got like all these different vendors and 1099s and income streams that are hard to keep track of. So I don't have the same experience. But some of you are going to go out there and look, and you're going to go, look, the real question is my W-2 better? And is there less government bite out of it than last year? And am I getting what I want for it out of my government? I mean, I don't think any of us mind paying for government if it's actually doing what we think it's going to do. So that's the problem. It's this constant Trump. It's the weirdest instinct in the world. For a sales guy, the worst thing you can do is overpromise and underdeliver unless your entire business model is based on kind of a scam. And I've never been that guy, and I never have been able to go out there and sell things saying, like, this will change your life. It's amazing. It's why I turn away sponsors regularly when they try to make these wild claims. Like, can you make my water not taste like sulfur? Okay, good. That's a good product. I'll buy that. Can you take my phone and make it no longer do what it's, put out the signals? And is it a comfortable, useful backpack? Done. Sold. Easy day. Can you sell me emergency food that will last for a long time? Got it. Okay, I'm just going through the sponsors that we got on the top of my head. I've got an emergency generator sitting outside of this studio, and when the power goes out in my house, that runs the entire studio, and you guys wouldn't even know. I could have like a complete blackout. There could be a complete shutdown all over Austin, Texas, and this thing would still run as long as the fiber lines are connected. That's a big deal. They don't say it's going to change your life and it's going to revolutionize it. It's like you got a hole. We're going to solve it for the amount of money that we promise you. That's what people wanted. They didn't want some gold-gilded, bring in all these foreigners, claim that we're going to get rid of all the bad guys, and then turn around and we're soft on it. We're going to deport 20 million people. Just kidding. It's 300,000 people. Owen went on his rant the same kind of way. And this is the under-promise situation in the FBI. Remember, we were going to get what? We were going to get arrests, convictions. We were going to put everybody on notice that if you did bad things under the government's guise, then you were going to pay for it. That always sounded like a little bit of an overpromise. And I know that they're not going to do it because they're not even going to get the damn Epstein files, people. That's how I know. They're not even going to get the Epstein files. They got nobody. They got Letitia James concerned, and they got John Bolton, and everybody else is done. They're all safe because the files that they have and the wrongdoing that happened, Mar-a-Lago or take your pick, where did it go? To Congress. Not to a prosecutor, not to DOJ, not in front of a grand jury to get indictments where people are going to lose their jobs and then their freedom. No. They went over to members of Congress who can hold hearings and do fundraisers. Here's John Solomon. Why am I hard on John Solomon? John Solomon's people are working behind the scenes on behalf of Kash Patel to try to smear me. More on that soon, I hope. Very fun. Here's a guy with a lisp and a doughy face talking about a victory that's not a victory at all. It's actually a loss if we're being fair and we count things based on who goes to jail, which I thought a lot of us wanted.
The Justice Department and FBI are about to turn over a tranche of emails showing that the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, did not have probable cause, did not meet the standard for a search warrant when they raided President Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. That is significant. Why? It's in the statutory limit. It is prosecutable in the state of Florida, so you're not dealing with Virginia or Washington or New York jurors. And it could lead to both criminal charges against the prosecutors if they misled the court, or civil litigations where the president sues his own Justice Department saying, you violated my Fourth Amendment right against illegal search and seizure.
Già troppa frociaggine.
I need the Pope. I need the last Pope to come out here and talk about there's too much of the frociaggine going on here. It's nauseating to me. What are you saying there, dude? Oh, your entire gig is that you have incredible access, aka you're best buddies with the people that run the agencies. And now you go out there and you just run slop for them. You're a propaganda minister. Should I just say it? Yeah. Okay, so here's the deal, chat, folks. Yesterday, John Solomon's organization reached out to tell me that they're going to run a hit piece on me. They didn't say it, but they just said, we'd like to do this story that's really negative about you. Do you have any comment on it? More on that soon. The fact of the matter is I do have a comment on it. You're not going to like it because you're dumb. Because you guys are running cover for an administration that's not doing the work. We would all cheer them on if they did it. This is from last night after the announcement that we were going to see Bongino step away in January. So we got this media tour of the sycophants, not the sickos, long-form fans who are like child predators. No, actual sycophants, people who suckle up for access and to make sure that they're still relevant. The fake independent media went out there and ran to the other things. This is why I stepped away and said, I'm not going to do Newsmax. Because why? Why am I going to go on Newsmax? What do I have to say to them in 12 seconds? I'll just say it here and you guys they can cut it. Here's John telling, I think this is Eric Boylan. Yeah. Okay. I think that's who that is. Everything is so great. And it was always planned that Dan Bongino wouldn't even stay a whole year in the job. He didn't even make it off probation.
Before we go, if you don't mind, you're very close to Kash Patel. You have great access. Dan Bongino, good friend of mine. I keep reading these articles that he's finished. He may be leaving. Yeah. I texted him last night.
I think he'll leave in January officially. I think he's probably on holiday soon, but I think he'll leave in January. I think that's the current plan. By the way, that's been the plan for some time since the summer. He wanted to get the January 6th pipe bomb investigation done and some other things. He wanted to get the ship righted. But, he had a burgeoning radio empire that had to be put on hold, and that's never a good thing for your business. So I think he did the job that Kash Patel and the president asked him to do. Get the organization uprighted, get rid of the bad eggs, at least some of the bad eggs or many of the bad eggs, solve some of these lingering issues.
And just try to get the bad eggs and try to solve some of the issues to get the organization. You think the organization is upright? What's going on in Brown right now? You've got a deputy, you've got a director that's running around doing a podcast on a couch talking about how great his girlfriend is. We're a totally unserious nation. My buddy Phil Kennedy, who is the original producer of this program, made me do a podcast. Thank God for Phil. Phil's one of the great people in my life that when I met him, he was only on my team for a couple of months, but he's a lifelong friend. And they removed Phil Kennedy from the FBI before me. I call him the canary in the coal mine. And I told him right at the time, this was in September of 2021. I said, Phil, if they can remove you from the Bureau, and Phil's one of the nicest guys you've ever met, I promise you, if there's a problem between you and Phil Kennedy, you are the problem. Phil Kennedy's easily one of the nicest people I ever met in the FBI. He's also hyper competent. He's also a sleeper. He's like athletic, but you wouldn't necessarily know. He's a tall former, high school basketball player. He can shoot. I trust him to make good decisions. He's bright. He has advanced degrees and he has competencies in specific fields, like the things that you thought the FBI did. You're like, oh, how about an accountant that's also an athlete? Would that be someone you could hire? Yeah, it's called Phil Kennedy. They got rid of him. Jennifer Moore got rid of him. The Chris Wray FBI got rid of him. And all the people that got promoted under that same FBI are still the managers. I pointed this out on InfoWars the other day. I'm going to say it to you guys. The people who are the GS-15, that's your second line supervisors in the FBI, ASACs, section chiefs, etc. I think they're section chiefs. Those people, or maybe they're just unit chiefs and assistant section chiefs. It's all dumb. The people that were the second line supervisors in the Bureau and the workforce that is like the mid-level managers of headquarters, they all got promoted by Chris Wray's FBI. They all raised their hand and said, I want to be a supervisor under this organization. Some of them got promoted by Jim Comey. A lot of them did. And so those are the people that make up the entirety of the ranks that go between the people who are doing the work, the people that supervise the actual work, and the director and the deputy. Everything in the middle of that sandwich, all that junk, all got there under Wray. They're all part of the old culture because nothing has changed. So Phil pointed out something that I think is quite interesting. He did a thread yesterday, or a post. Things in the FBI that last longer than Dan Bongino. Is this a dunk? Not really. This is just a fact. Confidential human source admonishments. They last for 12 months. That means if I tell you as an FBI source that you have to be truthful with me, that this is a voluntary relationship, that you may be called to testify. These are called admonishments. We have to give them to you by contract. We have to do it once a year minimum. They last for a year, 12 months, longer than Dan Bongino. You know what also is a year? SES probation. If you take a job in the senior executive service, you know, like Dan Bongino did, like people who get promoted from the GS-14 or GS-15 level, then they move into being a special agent in charge, or they go into the deputy assistant directorship or whatever. When they move into the SES ranks, those people have a 1-year probation period. By the way, that's why they don't want to go in there, because Kash Patel can fire them at will. That also is longer and lasts longer than Dan Bongino. At TDY to headquarters, a temporary duty assignment from your field office out to headquarters is 18 months. There are many people in the Bureau who are just wrapping up TDY's, temporary duties, longer than the entire career that Bongino had there. Regular agents have 2-year probations. Military veterans have 1-year probations. Both of those probations are longer than the amount of time that we found Dan Bongino working there. A hardship tour to one of the Indian country reservations. Maybe you go to Gallup, New Mexico. Maybe you end up out in Shelby, Montana, where I wanted to go. 3 to 5 years. Farmington, New Mexico. There's a couple of other ones that are considered rough. 3 to 5 years for a hardship tour. A job that nobody wants. Your body armor lasts for 5 years by contract. Everything that I can think of that has a time limit on it at the FBI lasts longer than the guy who went there. And the best one, of course, is whistleblower suspensions. They're indefinite, which is to say, freaking forever. Garrett O'Boyle being the exception. Steve Friend sort of being an exception since he was apparently rehired for a week. We've got a whistleblower disclosure from him. Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. That seems like a Friday thing to do. I've got the disclosure showing you guys the agreement that the FBI entered into with Steve Friend, and the violation started immediately. They broke the rules, they broke their own engagement, and then they basically fake hired him back to fire him, which is gross. So there's that. Here is what I will call the pre-retribution tour, the pre-redemption tour of Dan Bongino. We're going to get Poso. We're going to get Bannon. We're going to get Solomon. We're going to get a handful of others, Mike Davis, Julie Kelly. They're all going to go out and do media hits talking about what a great guy. Oh, it's so amazing. Dan Bongino, we always planned on leaving this soon. He always planned on leaving at the end of the year. Really? And then why was it shocking when I told you guys that back going back to April? That we expected him to we didn't even expect him to last the year because he sucked at it. Because he didn't have the institutional knowledge. He didn't have the ability to do this job in the first place. It was ego, pride, hubris, take your pick. Here's Poso on Bannon.
But with the Charlie Kirk assassination still in living memory of people and I know affecting people every day, we need to know immediately if there's a scintilla, a possibility that Ella Cook was targeted because she's a young conservative. We need to know that. We must know that. And just as we talked right there, just came across the wire, Dan Bongino, it's official, been rumors all day. And Jack, you're a guy that knows Dan as well as anybody. Dan Bongino has just tendered his resignation to the president. Your thoughts?
Steve, look, I know that's a tough job. I don't know that anyone does that job longer than 1 year or 2 years. And obviously being separated from his children, his young children, his family is very tough. And so I'd like to hear from Dan. Dan's someone that obviously all of us here in the posse have been close with for many, many years, someone that we follow, someone that we're friends with. And so I'd like to hear what is it? Is he saying mission accomplished, or is this under different circumstances? I think we all need to know what is really going on inside the FBI.
Got it. Nobody does it for more than a year except James B. Adams did it for 5 years in the early 70s. The guy who followed him did it for 14 years. That's Floyd Clark. And you got kind of like some interim guys here. Another one did it for 2 years. This is Weldon Kennedy. You guys are getting where I'm coming from here. Got about 2 years here for Tom Pickard. That was in coming on the edge of 9/11. We got another 1 year. Some people do it for longer. Some people do it for less. Definitely people do it longer than 1 to 2 years. Most of them actually do have children. Very few have young children. Does Dan Bongino have young children? Is that a thing that I missed? Mark Giuliano, 3 years. Andy McCabe. If he hadn't been fired, it would have been longer, but did it for 2 years. David Bowditch, about 3. And then Paul Abate, his predecessor, who was terrible and helped wreck the Bureau. Yeah, he did it for like 4 years. So there you go. Dan Bongino, 9 months. Not a great look, people. The facts are not in your favor. So just make it up. Remember, this was always the plan. We are now going to do revisionist history, also known as slop. Here's my favorite. This is Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project, who's going out and campaigning about what happened there. All these people are not independent. They all suckle at the teat for the same types of donors. They all suckle at the teat for the same types of access. That's what they're doing. They're trading access and influence for money. And none of them have to be honest, because that's not what the game is.
Your thoughts, sir?
I would say cheers to FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. He's a warrior. He's a friend. He went to the FBI for a short stint to bring much needed, bold, serious reforms to the FBI. He never intended to stay beyond January. He's told me that privately for many, many, many months. He left a lot of money on the table to go do this government service. He's going to go back and play a crucial role on the outside by continuing his conservative media, his podcast, and other media outlets that he runs to make sure that we have more warriors on the outside. This has always been Dan Bongino's plan, and we should thank him for his service.
Let's just do that. Yeah. Can someone just help me with the word warrior? Will anyone please explain to me what the word warrior means? I've seen the chat actually key in on this, and some of you guys I know are vets who actually did go to war. What war did Dan Bongino engage in? And then what was his, what sort of campaign medals does he have in that war? Just curious. It's always interesting to me when I see these quote unquote conservative guys, and I'm not trying to dunk on people specifically, but if you're going to go out there and talk about how you're this special creature doing this special version of conservatism, you're the best that has to be offered. Why are you single men in your 40s and 50s? Why are there rumors about the other men that you hang out with in your free time? Just saying. When people come out and reach out and say, hey, you're not wrong about that. Okay, listen, so he's going to go back to his podcast. I remember that podcast. I was on the podcast. Looks like this.
The Mar-a-Lago raid's been of particular interest to me.
Of course.
It's unprecedented. I mean, literally without precedent. We've never done this before. Regardless of anyone's personal politics, there have been paperwork disputes about this in the past. I'm not asking you to comment on the politics at all. But when FBI agents, specifically Christopher Wray and the management staff, that unquestionably are briefed in a high-profile case like this, do you think it even occurs to them that they're partaking in an act that's so overtly political and has a chance to change the politics of the United States moving forward for the negative? In other words, you think they're saying to them, Merrick Garland at DOJ, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea, or is it just we're going to be loyal little soldiers here and do what you tell us to do?
I don't want to speculate on anyone else's motivation. Sure, I know what I look at, right? I've got friends that I don't speak to after that. I assume they were part of it. It's like, I don't know what happened, but you guys forgot to throw the BS flag on that. You asked me to go raid President Obama's house. You asked me to go raid President Bush's house. It's not happening. I'm sorry, it's not happening. I'm not doing that. And I'm going to probably be pretty vocal. That's probably going to be my last day. It's not going to happen. So we had a lot of people that said yes. And I think that so much compliance got done. We talked briefly. Here's what I'll kind of share as my last kind of concern. Every single FBI agent has to go to the Holocaust Museum for a full day when we're in the academy. And they have a special program. I don't know if you've ever been to it, but it's well worth your time. If you're a law enforcement officer, you should definitely go through the Holocaust Museum and see the piece they do for law enforcement specific. It's a walking tour. It's looking through the lens of how did this atrocity take place? And the only way it takes place is minor government officials are on board, and local law enforcement and state law enforcement and federal law enforcement has to say yes. Because if anybody refuses to get with the program, it doesn't happen. And the answer, I'm just following orders, the Nuremberg piece, it doesn't fly. We know better. Like, that's the whole point of history. We're supposed to be able to see that. That's why every agent has to go to that day. We're supposed to know that if they ask you to do something that's illegal, immoral, or unethical, following orders is not an excuse.
That's it. Following orders is not an excuse. Does he think that he's changed that by his time there? Because I can guarantee you that it didn't change. I love watching you guys because you guys are out there going, oh, you got more gray in your beard now and your voice sounds different. Well, one of them is because the microphone was different. It was a lav mic, and this has a lot more dynamic range to it. The other thing is I was sick as a dog. Guys, I had just left my home. I had sold my home because the FBI took my job and I had no income anymore. And that income didn't change for another 6 or 7 months. So no money at all coming in. Took a plane trip, flew from El Paso to Miami, got in a car, didn't sleep the night before because I was stuck in an airport in Dallas, and then drove up there exhausted, 36 hours basically without any real sleep. And then went up and had that 2-hour marathon interview. Was the first time I ever said anything publicly. You guys saw me at like my weakest and my most tired, and I was still making the same point that I'm making today. You didn't hire people for principles. You didn't go out there and gut the problem. The problem still exists. It existed in November or September of 2022 when I did that interview. It exists today in December of 2025. It's going to exist starting in January of 2027. If we lose the House, which I think we will, whatever we is, it's all over then. Then your Trump administration promises are basically going to just be running into roadblocks for the end, and then we just wait for the next iteration, the next regime to come in. There'll be no Epstein files. There'll be no deep state justice. There'll be no people that have been removed. And more importantly, because all those things are secondary, those are all symptoms, they will not fix the problem that we have weaponized a government, which has allowed them to find outcomes and not due process. Okay? The main message of this program is always the same. Government should be interested in process, not in what happens after they instigate the process. It doesn't matter whether there's a conviction or not a conviction. It doesn't matter if certain people go to jail or other people do not. What you do is you apply the law fairly. You have no interest in what the outcome is. You let the courts and the people and the jury of their peers figure that out when it comes to the DOJ, when it comes to the Justice Department, when it comes to the justice apparatus, the law enforcement entities. You don't go out there and assume that somebody is wrong and then go investigate them and find out what the issue is. No. You follow facts. You don't go and find every single person that bought a freaking 1-inch pipe and then find out if that person may have been in Washington, D.C. and then go out there and do a criminal complaint and arrest them. That's total bullshit. That's not what we do. We, Americans, historically, that's not what we designed our system to do. It's so clear that you can't take all of the people, find out the people who have done the one thing that might be indicative of a bad behavior, and then hone in and see if we could find out if they were roughly in the same area and then get them. Because that's what happened. That's the victory that Dan Bongino is going to try to hang his hat on, a pipe bomber case. Guys, I'll tell you this. Brian Cole Jr. is going to go in front of a court in Washington, D.C. on December the 30th, 12 days away. And between now, we have Christmas, and then we are going to do some of the more important shows covering down on the stories that Blaze better freaking release, because if they don't do it, then Steve Baker and I are going to do it solo. They got the wrong guy because they needed a win. That is exactly the thing that I was talking about to Dan Bongino. Before he was even thinking about being a Rumble star, before he was even thinking about being a guy that might be in the Trump administration, because Donald Trump hadn't been elected yet, what happened is they just did a raid on the president's house, and rather than go fix the problem that existed, that had all those people saying yes, they went out and gave them similar orders and said, oh, go target Antifa and go do this other political priority and this and that. And we just saw it the other day. They arrested some people, some boneheads out in the desert who were making a bomb at a chemical picnic, which is what I call that thing. They had drones. They had all. Do you know what happens for an exigent circumstance? Do you have time to go get the drone camera footage up? No. You think someone's going to blow something up, so you deploy right now. And the SWAT team goes and flashbangs them. And it's a wild, what they call a hasty op order. You get a frago, so you get a piece of it. Get ready. We may have a mission. And then everybody runs down and takes them down. That's not what happened there. They were like, oh, we're going to swear this thing out on a Saturday. And then we're going to go for maximum effect and get all of our video footage so we have a big takedown because we suck at what's going on in Brown University and it's looking really bad. The same people that went after J6ers and got, the same people that called CNN to show up before they arrested Roger Stone, the same people that said yes to all that crap, they all will say the same yes to Dan Bongino or the next person that comes in. You guys don't know that? You don't know that the yes people are still there? The culture hasn't changed. Going out and declaring victory is classic. It's the same thing that Donald Trump did in that speech. We solved high prices, even though they're still high. But I said we solved it. Claiming mission accomplished is a failure. It's just disappointing. And I'm gonna play this one last little video clip here because there are a few voices that really do get it. and they don't seem beholden to anybody else. And that's why I gravitate towards them. That's why I like people like Tom Massey. Tom Massey said this the other day. They're not that incompetent. The problem is they're morally flexible, which is the same thing I said to Bongino September 2022. So this does kind of hit home personally for me. You actually had the guy who heard from the person on the inside who was a victim of what it did and didn't stay like a victim and pout about it. I went out and started talking about it, and I shared the information so that more people who were in a position to do something could do something. And did they do something? No. Do you know Dan Bongino asked Steve Friend to be part of his team in March of 2025, earlier this year? Said, will you come in and help me avoid the snakes and the pitfalls and speak bureau with me? And he said, yes, I'd be honored to do that, even though all the crazy things that happened. And Dan said, I'm really sorry about what happened with Julie Kelly. And, all that was a big misunderstanding. And we really want to make this thing successful. And we took him at his word at that time. So I gave him some leeway to do the thing. And then I immediately recognized that they didn't call Steve Friend back. And Steve didn't get called back to Washington, D.C. to go do the job. So they got owned by the same organization that they claimed they were going to go fight. And now he's claiming victory. Screw you. The FBI is not that incompetent. They're just flexible.
If we believe today's FBI's story that this case was covered up for 4 years, and they're being charitable and alluding to incompetency. But you can't be this incompetent, right? If you've got these cell phone pings and it's dead to rights, how could you be this incompetent? If you believe today's FBI story, then you need to make some arrests at the FBI. You definitely, if you don't, I think there need to be arrests at the FBI and prosecutions, and there of the people who were there who covered this up, because you can't say it was just bad investigation. And you need to be firing everybody who touched this case, because they're not going to solve the next case, if you believe that.
You may know this better.
If you believe that, right? Does he sound like he believes that? Tom Massey knows what happened on January 5th on that night better than most. And there's a reason why he's been the person pushing for answers while everyone else is hiding.
Than me, but there was a lot of talk about cleaning house at the FBI. Certainly Kash Patel's entire pre-nomination and confirmation story was we have to clean house. I think he actually argued that we need to shut it down.
Right.
Has there been a house cleaning?
I don't think so.
Are you aware of anything?
This Jocelyn Ballantine, she's still there at DOJ, and she's been, not only she's there, she's the lead prosecutor against this suspect now.
And they didn't fix it until they were told.
And we already know she's bi, so that part hasn't been cleaned house. They didn't say they fired the people that worked on this case. They said they brought in a new, they moved those people off to the side and brought in a new crew, and that's how they made this breakthrough.
Remember, the claim is the only win that Dan Bongino is going to put in the feather in his hat, the only thing he's going to step out on, that was a victory. Davis said it. Poso said it. He wanted to solve the problem of the January 6th pipe bomber. And his answer to it was in complete opposition to everything he ever said about it. No deep state cover-up. No governmental conspiracy. No people in high places that are involved. Just some dude who's a brony living in Woodbridge, Virginia, down the street. Just got it in his head 2 years prior that he was going to make pipe bombs on the outside chance that someone stole an election because he's a big Trump fan, even though his family are wild leftists. They're hard left. Nice people, but they're on the left for sure. And he's just randomly a Trump fan living in the basement.
Here's another possibility that needs to be discussed, because this is the one that Kyle Seraphin, I think, has mentioned as a possibility, that the FBI really isn't that incompetent, that they did have this gentleman as a suspect, and they found enough information to clear his name already and never went to the trouble of arresting him and doing a press release, because there was something extenuating, something that exonerated him. That's also a case that, there may be not a smoking gun. What's the opposite of a smoking gun? A rock solid alibi for this individual that they discovered.
Okay. What do you think is more plausible? That the FBI is that incompetent and they didn't get it done? Or that they went out there to give this guy a win so he would leave? And if they're screwing up intentionally, which there's a real possibility, and that is a dark ass possibility. Like I said, 30% chance that's the case, 70% not. It doesn't fit with my experience of people who do the work on the ground, but that doesn't mean management's not putting the B team or the C team forward, knowing that it's going to make the guys at the top, because you don't know who the managers are that are making these decisions. But I guarantee you know that you're going to hold Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, whose name are at the front of the door and are out there doing the press conferences. You're going to hold them accountable for it. Is it reasonable to even speculate that our FBI, as it stands right now, which has not been dramatically changed? Tom Massey's on oversight. He's on the Judiciary Committee. I'm sitting here talking to people inside the Bureau every day. They tell me it's probably worse than it was then. And you took guys that spent their entire career, built up a fortune, coming in saying, we're going to destroy this thing. You think those people took that lightly and said, oh, well, now that you're here, we're going to be friendly with you? Would you? If somebody crapped on your life's work that you thought you think these people don't think they're the bad guy, folks. The people that I was talking about when I sat down in September of 22, they don't think they're the bad guy. The Nazis didn't think they were the bad guys. The good Germans thought they were following orders, that they were being patriotic. The good Americans that followed the COVID tyranny, they thought they were doing the right thing. They didn't do it because they were trying to be mean. They were doing it because they thought that was the moral good and they were superior to you. This is the entire problem. Everybody thinks they're the hero of their own story. From the outside, we can see a little bit better. If you're disconnected and unemotional, you can go, well, that's not true. These people thought they were doing the right thing, and you came in and said they were doing the wrong thing, and you think they're going to take that lightly and they're not going to embarrass you? That's why I think Tom Massey understands human nature the way that I do, which is that wouldn't it be very easy to set up the wrong guy, knowing that we already have exculpatory information and assuming that it'll probably come out in trial or in discovery or whatever, and that thing's going to blow up? How does Dan Bongino, who hung his hat on finding the pipe bomber and took credit for it in that circle jerk press conference the other day, how does he go back to a podcast only to find out that just days after his whole major accomplishment, the only thing he accomplished that he can claim in that 9 months, goes away? The statistics, they're all going to be rewritten at the end of the year. When they revise the statistics, there's going to be more murders than there were. We're going to go out there and see that a bunch of cities didn't report it. So they didn't solve murder. There's going to be fentanyl deaths that continue on. They didn't solve the fentanyl crisis by signing a paper with China that they wiped their ass with, because that's what happens. Like, these are not real. That's not real. All that is nonsense. So if you hung your hat on one accomplishment and that accomplishment explodes, your hat hits the floor. And so should your credibility, because you didn't even realize what it was that you were working in. And maybe it's because you were only there for 9 months. And that's fair. I worked more time at a freaking Baskin Robbins than Dan Bongino did at the FBI. I spent more time waiting tables on the floor for Chili's than Dan Bongino did at the FBI. I don't define myself as a Chili's, waiter, although I was a good one. How about that? My buddy said he probably spent more time shooting at the range for the FBI in 16 years than Bongino probably did for the entire time that he was working in the Hoover building. There's real comparisons about how light that work was. And if all you have to hang it on is a J6 pipe bomber that's going to explode, boom. Sorry, bro. Good luck with that. You can come at me. I'm a small fry compared to you. So use your big microphone. Talk tough. That's what bullies do. People who want to perform. So now I'm going to end it with Donald Trump talking. Before we finish up with that, let me just remind you again, please like the video if you did like it. Don't like it if you don't like it. That's the same thing there. Subscribe if you want to hear more. Set the notifications up if you want to know when we go live, which is at 9:30 Eastern time, 8:30 here in Texas, America. Maybe we'll change the time after the end of the year or something. You guys let me know. We could put a poll over on locals, which you can see there, KyleSeraphin.com. If you're not listening on Spotify, if you're just hearing the audio and you're missing out on the video, then that's where you find it, KyleSeraphinShow.com. You can't even see that, but I put it on the screen for you for those who are listening. And when you can see it, you'll go, oh, that's how you find it. So there it is. You may hear some Spotify ads intermittently on these things. They actually basically pay the rent here, if you guys can believe that. And I don't think they're that obtrusive, and you can even skip them on Spotify very easily. Same thing on Apple. So that's all that. Let's go ahead and end with Donald Trump's original promises. And I think this is critical. I think it's important. And I think it's worth us evaluating this administration against what they claimed the original priorities were. October 2016, prior to election, prior to 1.0, this is what Donald Trump said he was going to bring to you. And this is why people got excited about it. And then you tell me if he did it in the comments below. We're going to end. This is about 5.5 minutes long. So that's going to be the end and the outro here.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. Our campaign represents a true existential threat like they haven't seen before. This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled our country dry. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries all around the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, and this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy, but are in fact controlled by a small handful of global special interests rigging the system, and our system is rigged. This is reality. You know it, they know it, I know it, and pretty much the whole world knows it. The Clinton machine is at the center of this power structure. We've seen this firsthand in the WikiLeaks documents, in which Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty in order to enrich these global financial powers, her special interest friends, and her donors. Honestly, she should be locked up. The most powerful weapon deployed by the Clintons is the corporate media, the press. Let's be clear on one thing. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. Anyone who challenges their control is deemed a sexist, a racist, a xenophobe. They will lie, and then again, they will do worse than that. They will do whatever is necessary. The Clintons are criminals, remember that. This is well documented. And the establishment that protects them has engaged in a massive cover-up of widespread criminal activity at the State Department and the Clinton Foundation in order to keep the Clintons in power. They knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. They knew they would stop at nothing to try to stop me. Nevertheless, I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you. I take them for our movement so that we can have our country back. I knew this day would arrive. It's only a question of when. And I knew the American people would rise above it and vote for the future they deserve. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you. The only force strong enough to save our country is us. The only people brave enough to vote out this corrupt establishment is you, the American people. Our great civilization has come upon a moment of reckoning. I didn't need to do this, folks, believe me. I built a great company, and I had a wonderful life. I could have enjoyed the fruits and benefit of years of successful business deals and businesses for myself and my family, instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks. Who would have thought? I'm doing it because this country has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again.